In July 1996, a family of 4 from Dresden, Germany, drove into Death Valley in a rented minivan. Air temperatures exceeded 112 degrees Fahrenheit. They were never seen alive again. A 250-person search found the vehicle, but not a single trace of the family. It would take 13 years and 1 retired engineer to uncover what the desert had swallowed and why everyone had been searching in the wrong direction. Heat presses down on the valley floor, thick and relentless. In July, Death Valley becomes a furnace with no escape, where the air itself can burn the skin and every breath feels heavy. The official weather station at Furnace Creek records average highs of 112 degrees Fahrenheit, but the ground temperature can climb even higher, radiating off the salt flats and rocky canyons. No trees, no streams, only a vast emptiness stretching for miles in every direction. The park covers more than 5,000 square miles, bigger than some states, and yet it offers almost no relief for those who wander off the main roads. In the backcountry, it can take hours for help to arrive, if anyone even knows to look. Cell service is almost non-existent, and the nearest shaded structure could be a half-day's walk away. Dehydration starts quietly, an hour or 2 after water runs low. Sweat dries before it can cool the body, and the mind grows foggy as the sun climbs higher. Seasoned rangers know that even a short detour, a single missed turn, can turn fatal in this kind of heat. Here, the desert does not forgive small mistakes. In the shimmering distance, the faint sound of an engine grows. Outsiders are approaching, unaware of just how thin the margin for error has become. Egbert Rimkus, Cornelia Meyer, and their 2 sons, Georg and Max, carried the optimism of a summer holiday as they set out from Dresden. Their family was newly blended. Egbert, an architect in his 30s, had divorced but remained close with his son Georg, now 10. Cornelia, a graphic design student, brought her 4-year-old son Max. The 2 boys, used to sharing vacations, looked forward to one last adventure before school resumed in the fall. They arrived in California in early July 1996 after a long flight from Frankfurt. The rental paperwork at Los Angeles International Airport listed Egbert and Cornelia as the drivers of a green Plymouth Voyager minivan, chosen for its space and comfort. The contract specified a return date at the end of the month, a routine detail that would soon become a clue for investigators. The van was loaded with luggage, a German-language travel guide, and the kind of road trip excitement that can make even the most unfamiliar landscape feel inviting. For the family, the American West was a place of open roads and endless possibility. They had no experience with deserts like Death Valley, no reason to suspect that the terrain could turn from scenic to deadly in a matter of hours. The minivan, with its air conditioning and soft seats, seemed a reliable shield against the heat. But the desert's rules are absolute, and the family's sense of safety would prove heartbreakingly fragile. At 3:20 in the afternoon on July 23, 1996, the minivan's air conditioning struggled against the heat as Egbert Rimkus pulled off onto the gravel near a remote junction. Cornelia Meyer, map in hand, dialed a local gas station from the passenger seat. The call was brief and practical. She asked about road conditions ahead, mentioning they were short on time and considering a shortcut. The attendant, who later noted the exchange in his logbook, warned that the road was unpaved, sandy, and rarely traveled. Still, the family pressed on, trusting the guidebook's promise of a scenic route and hoping to save hours on the drive west. The van's fuel gauge hovered near empty, a detail that might have gone unnoticed in the rush of decision-making. With 2 children in the back, the adults weighed their options: to double back toward the main road and certain safety, or to risk the shortcut through the heart of the desert. The visitor log at Furnace Creek had recorded their presence earlier that afternoon, but now there would be no more official entries, no more scheduled stops. Coordinates later recovered: 35 degrees, 52 minutes, 3 seconds north, 116 degrees, 58 minutes, 29 seconds west, pinpoint the van's final halt. The engine cooled as the sun dropped, but the heat radiated off the sand, making every minute outside unbearable. The shortcut, meant to save time, had delivered them into a dead end. Each small choice, trusting a map, ignoring a warning, pushing a little farther, had stacked quietly against them. The van would not move again. On October 21, 1996, a Bell 212 helicopter lifted off from Furnace Creek, piloted by Park Ranger Dave Brenner. The flight plan called for a sweep along the edge of the China Lake boundary, a place so rarely visited it barely registered on most maps. At 9:45 in the morning, the green Plymouth Voyager came into view, half buried in the sand, its tires deflated, and its windshield cracked. Brenner landed and recorded the precise GPS waypoint, 36.5200 north, 117.1583 west, then began a methodical inspection. The van's doors were locked. On the roof, a luggage tag with the name Mahood clung to a metal rail, faded but legible. Inside, the air was stifling, thick with the smell of sun-baked plastic and dust. Brenner's inventory listed 2 coolers, a German-language travel guide, a child's safety seat, a jug with only a little water left, and an empty receipt from Dollar Rent-A-Car. No passports, wallets, or signs of the family themselves. 8 photographs were taken, each frame capturing the stillness and the absence. By 10:15 in the morning, a formal report was filed. The van appeared voluntarily abandoned. There was no evidence of forced entry, and no obvious clues to what had happened. The paperwork was signed and sent to the Inyo County Sheriff's Office. The discovery of the van was the first hard fact in months of silence, and it triggered the full machinery of search and rescue. Now, the question was no longer if something had gone wrong, but how far the consequences had already spread. Search crews arrived with helicopters, dogs, and nearly 250 trained rescuers. They mapped out grids north, east, and west of the abandoned van, covering miles of open desert in 4 days. But the southern sector, the most direct route toward possible safety, was left untouched. On the official maps, a thick line marked the edge of the China Lake Naval Weapons Station, over 1 million acres of military land, unmarked by fences or warning signs in the open desert. To American planners, this was restricted ground, assumed off-limits both legally and physically. The logic seemed sound. No one would willingly cross into a military base, especially foreign tourists. For German visitors, though, the absence of barriers meant nothing. In Germany, military zones are ringed with fences and clear signage. In Death Valley, the boundary was invisible, just another stretch of sand and rock. Rescue coordinators believed the family would backtrack toward the main road or head for higher ground, not walk south into what their maps labeled as forbidden. That assumption shaped every decision. No ground teams or aircraft were assigned to sweep the area beyond the southern wash. Even as the days passed and hope faded, the result was a search grid with a blind spot, one that left the family's actual escape route untouched and their fate hidden for more than a decade. The official reports noted the thoroughness of the effort, but the omission of the South was never questioned until an outsider began to look at the terrain with different eyes. Tom Mahood stood at the edge of the wash, sweat stinging his eyes, GPS in one hand and a battered printout of the 1996 search grid in the other. 13 years had passed since the van was found, and still no one could say for certain what became of the Death Valley Germans. Mahood, a retired engineer with a habit for detail, had pored over every map and logbook, convinced that the answer lay not in the official reports, but in the overlooked lines between them. Where the search teams saw a boundary, military land, off-limits and empty, Mahood saw only more desert, indistinguishable from the rest. He traced the terrain on foot, following the logic of thirst and hope, not the lines on someone else's map. On November 12, 2009, Mahood and fellow rescuer Les Walker set out once more, starting at the van's last known coordinates and heading south into the stretch no one else had searched. Less than an hour in, a flash of glass caught the light. A wine bottle, the same brand as those cataloged from the van. Nearby, a handful of sun-bleached pages from a German planner, then Cornelia's wallet, still holding her driver's license and credit cards. The sense of discovery was heavy, edged with dread. A few steps farther, the ground gave up its secret. Human bones, scattered and half-buried, lay in the shadow of a low rise. 2 adult skeletons, later confirmed by DNA as Egbert Rimkus and Cornelia Meyer, a child's shoe sole, brittle and shrunken, offered the only sign of the boys. The artifacts, travel documents, a water purification bottle, a hand-drawn map, were meticulously photographed and logged, each one a silent witness to the ordeal. The sight of those bones made the distance between speculation and truth suddenly impossible to ignore. When the news reached Germany, it ended years of waiting for answers, but not the ache of what was lost. The desert had kept its silence for over a decade, and only a stubborn civilian logic had finally broken it. Even now, Death Valley claims the unprepared. Over 200 search and rescue calls every year. The desert's silence hides both tragedy and truth, demanding humility from all who enter. For those still seeking answers, the landscape's indifference endures. Some mysteries, like the heat, never fully let go. Share your thoughts below.